We all know the villain is gonna lose, but in these storylines, they lose hard. Like, really hard. So hard, in fact, that I wouldn't wish these fates on my own worst comic book arch nemesis. Hey guys, my name is AJ Spatola with Top 10 Nerd, and these are the top 10 most brutal villain defeats, part 2. At number 10, the Thing is crushed by Dr. Doom's hand. The Ultimatum storyline from Marvel Comics kinda got a bad rep, mainly because it's super dark and had some seriously brutal moments. But one of the craziest scenes was when Dr. Doom, who's usually a big deal in the Marvel Universe, he got his face absolutely obliterated in the palm of the Thing's hand. So how did it go down? Well, Dr. Doom did something pretty awful that set off a huge catastrophe, leading to a slew of unalivings, including some of the Fantastic Four crew. Now, the Thing, who's not usually the trigger-happy type, got seriously ticked off by all this. And so what does he do? He grabs Dr. Doom's head in his palm and squishes it like a stress ball. That's not really your average superhero move, but when you think about all the damage that Doom caused, you kind of get why the Thing lost it. I mean, it's a shocking moment in comic book history. The Thing usually doesn't go around squishing heads, but this time he definitely did. Ultimatum may not be everyone's cup of tea, but this definitely left a mark with that hardcore Thing moment. At number 9, Gnucci gets roasted. The Punisher, in his quest against crime boss Gnucci, went to extreme lengths. Gnucci, who was determined and relentless, despite losing all her limbs to a polar bear, met a brutal end. You see, after the Punisher took down her criminal network, he confronted her in a fiery showdown, to say the least. And so, in a final clash, Gnucci lunged at the Punisher without any limbs. It's pretty interesting to see. But Frank Castle didn't hold back, pushing her back into a raging fire. Now, the details of her fate weren't shown, but I mean, burning alive is a horrific way to go. The intense heat and flames would have caused some excruciating pain, making her last moments unimaginably agonizing. This villain's defeat stands out for its raw brutality, showcasing the Punisher's uncompromising stance against those he deems as threats to justice. The scene, although not super graphically depicted, leaves a super haunting impression of the price paid in battle against crime. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. Coming in at number 8, Taskmaster and Hyperion obliterate each other. Okay, so Taskmaster is like a human sponge. I mean, not in the way you would think, but I mean, in both ways in this case. You see, he can soak up fighting moves just by watching them, which is what makes him super dangerous in the Marvel world. But he's not somebody with magical powers like Thor. He's just got something even scarier: the willingness to do whatever it takes to win. In a recent showdown, Taskmaster faced off against Hyperion, who's basically one of Marvel's versions of Superman, which sounds like an impossible feat. Am I right? I mean, Hyperion is super tough, I mean, basically indestructible. But guess what? Taskmaster found a way to beat him, and he did so by getting his own ass beat really hard. You see, at first, Taskmaster was getting absolutely crushed. Bones were breaking, organs were being bruised, bodily fluids spattered all over the place. It was a total mess. It seems every trick in Taskmaster's book was just shrugged off by Hyperion. But ultimately, taking this beating paid off for Taskmaster, as Hyperion completely underestimated him when he ignored an arrow that, to his credit, it missed him by a mile. But as it turns out, that arrow was tipped with Argonite radiation, basically Hyperion's kryptonite, and the arrow actually turned back around like a boomerang and struck the unsuspecting super blonde right in the back. When Hyperion got hit, he screamed in pain, fell down, and here's the scary part. Hyperion was basically done for, like the mission was complete, and all Taskmaster had to do was walk away. But he didn't walk away. He went full-on savage, beating the guts out of the depowered Hyperion, ready to take him out completely. And if it weren't for Nick Cage yelling through his intercom, he totally would have done it too. It took Nick Cage reminding Taskmaster that he's supposed to be professional and not end this guy in cold blood. That's how ruthless Taskmaster could be though. I mean, he's beaten big shots before, but taking down Hyperion, even if it almost killed him, shows just how deadly this guy truly is. Heroes better not take him lightly or they might just end up regretting it big time. At number 7, the Joker caves Psimon's skull in. You know that unpredictable maniacal clown who's always keeping everybody on their toes? Well, he's known for some pretty wild antics, but this one really took the cake in terms of sheer brutality. So Psimon, this telekinetic and telepathic baddie from the Teen Titans series, was causing his usual chaos. But then then, in Salvation Run number 2, things took a really dark and gruesome turn, as the Joker, in his usual twisted manner, decided to put an end to Psimon, and let's just say it was not a peaceful resolution. See, the Joker went full on ruthless, grabbing a rock and violently caving in Psimon's skull. Yeah, you heard that right. It was seriously graphic and intense, even by Joker standards. This is coming from a guy who's literally skinned people alive before. The moment wasn't just shocking because it was the Joker, it was just the sheer level of brutality that left readers stunned. This is one of those jaw-dropping scenes that really makes you grasp how twisted and unpredictable the Joker can truly be when he's pushed to the edge. At number 6, Wolverine dismembers a Sabretooth clone. You're not gonna believe the crazy battles that went down in this one. Picture this. So Wolverine, the tough-as-nails mutant with those claws, is facing off against a clone of Sabretooth, villain known for being downright ruthless. This clone was no joke. It went on a full-on rampage and actually took out Feral, one of Wolverine's crew. So now that Wolverine was armed with the Murasama blade, which is basically a superhero's dream weapon for taking down the unkillable, Wolverine stepped up, and let me tell you, he did not hold back. With one swift move, he sliced off the clone's arm, and then, like a lightning bolt, he went for the head and chopped it clean off. But here's the thing, see, Wolverine wasn't about to take any chances. Even though Sabretooth was taken out with the Murasama blade, which basically renders him unable to regenerate, Logan still made sure to bury every single piece of that clone separately. Some next level caution right there. But just when he thought he'd finished off Sabretooth, the original popped back up, which was a surprise twist in the story. Wolverine must have been scratching his head thinking that he put the villain down for good, but nah, these comic book folks always find a way to bounce back. At number 5 was the comic book moment where Wonder Woman took down Maxwell Lord. This one is intense and brutal. So here's how it went down. Superman, under mind control, goes berserk, thinking his loved ones are in danger, but as it turns out, Maxwell Lord is pulling the strings. Wonder Woman steps up and wrangles Lord in her lasso of truth. Now here's the kicker. Lord spills the beans that the only way to free Superman's mind is to off him. And that's when Wonder Woman, with no time dilly-dallying, does the unthinkable, snapping Lord's neck. Pretty heavy stuff. No flashy speeches or grandstanding, just a swift execution with serious consequences. This scene caused quite a stir in the comic world for its shock value and for Wonder Woman's quite uncharacteristic move. It's one of those moments that makes you stop and think about the lengths that heroes might go to when backed up against the wall. At number 4, Sentry rips Carnage in half. So Carnage is one of the baddest of the bad guys in the Marvel Universe, causing all kinds of chaos in his Supermax prison. The guy was all set to go on a rampage, targeting Spider-Woman, Luke Cage, Spider-Man, Daredevil, Captain America, the whole lot. Now that's an all-star team of superheroes, but then things get really messy when in swoops the Sentry. Now the Sentry is no ordinary hero. He's got crazy powers, like next level stuff. Basically, yet another one of Marvel's Superman equivalents. So what does he do? He doesn't waste any time with punches or speeches, none of that. He just grabs Carnage, flies them both up into space, into the great atmosphere up there, and then, once he's up there, when it's just him, Carnage, and the stars, Sentry does the unthinkable. Just tears Carnage apart, quite literally, like a scene out of a sci-fi horror flick. You see, Carnage has a symbiote suit which gives him insane powers, making him almost unkillable, but when you're up against the power of a guy like the Sentry, someone who's got the strength of a zillion suns, well, let's just say it's game over for Carnage. The symbiote couldn't handle that kind of cosmic level power, and just like that, one of the nastiest villains ever meant a seriously brutal end. At number 3 is Daniel West getting nuked. Reverse Flash, aka Daniel West, wasn't your regular bad guy. He had his super speed going on just like the Flash, but he used his powers for all the wrong reasons. I mean, imagine going up against your own grandpa. That's some next level family drama right there. Now the Suicide Squad, known for recruiting not so good guys for their missions, thought it would be good to try to turn him into a hero, but alas, their plan didn't exactly pan out. So here comes the big showdown. There's this bomb planted by the League of Assassins set to destroy a whole city. And here's when Reverse Flash steps in, thinking that he can be the hero this time. He swoops in, saves the day by getting rid of the bomb, but then tragedy strikes as the thing blows up when he's holding it, and he's caught in the blast, ending his villainous run right then and there in the middle of the ocean. At number 2, the Void gets ripped in half by Knull. Alright, now it's the Sentry's turn to get ripped in half. Lots of ripping in half in this one. Alright, so the Sentry, a hero with a split personality, kind of like Jekyll and Hyde, but with superpowers. On one side, he's the good old hero, the Sentry, and on the other, he's the Void, a real cosmic level problem when the story calls for it. Now, things got really wild when these two sides joined forces and became a serious problem, but enter Knull, the big shot symbiote god. Knull and the Sentry had a clash where Knull managed to pull off something straight out of an ironic playbook as he actually ripped the Void himself in half. This wasn't the first time Void would bite the dust like this, but it seems like this time it actually stuck. What's interesting here is how the Sentry, who was once a huge multiversal threat and later became a super strong Avenger, but this defeat by Knull is the kind of comic book stuff that sticks around. It's like Knull was like, oh, you're into tearing things in half? How about I show you how it's done? At number 1 is Reverse Flash evaporated by Dr. Manhattan. Eobard Thawne, aka Reversed Flash from the DC Universe, is no stranger to biting the dust, having died and being resurrected more times than anybody can count. At this point, it's just been chopped up to his time traveling antics, rendering him a living paradox. But his demise in the Button storyline takes the cake. Picture this. He shows up in Batman's cave, zapped by a blue light while holding his, weird Watchmen button from the comics, and then he vanishes. Seconds later, he reappears, no button, and collapses. His body starts vaporizing on the spot, leaving only a skeleton, muttering about seeing God before biting the big one. Another thing is Reverse Flash thought he hit the jackpot by touching that button, hoping for some power or connection, but as it turns out, it was linked to Dr. Manhattan, the big shot from the Watchmen, who zapped him into a crisp in an attempt to remain undiscovered within the DC Universe. The whole ordeal with the button bridged the Watchmen world and the DC Universe together, and poor Eobard over here became a crispy critter in the cosmic crossover. Pretty brutal. As always, if there's a brutal villain defeat that you think I've missed, please let me know in the comments below. This has been AJ with Top 10 Nerd, and I'll catch you all in another video. Later, nerds.